The plea bargaining process begins with the defendant being called in front of a judge to be informed of their charges. At this point, the defendant will enter their plea of not guilty, guilty, or no contest. The prosecutor will offer the option to plead guilty and accept a lesser charge or the original charge with a reduced sentence without going to trial. This is known as a plea bargain. However, most of the discussion of options is acknowledged and discussed outside of the courtroom before an arraignment occurs. Alternatively, if the defendant chooses to proceed to trial and loses, the defendant most likely receives the maximum punishment. Inherently, the process ascertains that going to trial can be perceived as a risk of receiving a harsher sentence. A valid plea bargain entails 3 elements. First, the court accepting the plea must have jurisdiction, J-Rank 2020. Second, the defendant must be competent to make the decision to plead guilty, J-Rank 2020. Third, due process requires that the decision be voluntary and reasonably well informed, J-Rank 2020. The judge's role in the plea bargaining process is to cast the final approval. The judge also can reject the plea, although this rarely occurs. If the plea is rejected, the defendant can withdraw their guilty plea. In some jurisdictions, the judge is involved in determining what the sentence entails if the defendant accepts a plea bargain. However, in most jurisdictions, the judge's involvement in the plea bargaining negotiations is limited, but the judge still holds the final authority over the sentencing decisions. Ultimately, I favor plea bargaining. A popular argument against plea bargaining is that the process inherently makes the defendant forfeit their constitutional rights. Plea bargaining does require defendants to waive 3 rights protected by the 5th and 6th Amendments: the right to a jury trial, the right against self-incrimination, and the right to confront witnesses. Legal Information Institute 2020. My counter to that argument is the fact that in the end, the defendant ultimately still possesses the right to trial and the choice to weigh their options and take a plea deal or go to trial. Additionally, without the choice to obtain a plea bargain, the criminal justice system would become overloaded, and the major change would destroy the order of operation. As noted, absence of a plea bargaining system, the criminal justice system would crumble, or America would have to execute a lot more criminals. More 2020.